All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, all honor, and all glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone and rule well. Peace and blessings and much salutation to the elect men across the four winds of this earth and those that are men kicking this word in sincerity and in truth. All right, I'm your brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming at you all with another lesson through the Spirit. Lord willing, it's edifying, and this lesson right here is going to be based on some information that I had stumbled across while I was doing some studying. All right, and it's going to be as pertaining to the he-goat. All right, it's going to be pertaining to the he-goat and how the he-goat played a huge significance of what the Israelites was heavily involved in before. All right, how the he-goat signifies that we are in modern day Egypt. All right, and that the he-goat at the end of the day is a symbolic representation of Esau, Edom. All right, so Lord willing, this is edifying. A few days ago, I was doing some studying in this book. A few lessons have been coming out based on different parts of this book. Different brothers have been going into it. And this book is called Manners and Customs of the Bible, and this is the Freeman edition. Okay, and as I was doing some reading here, I stumbled across one of the topics that says goat worship. All right, and this is in the book of Leviticus chapter 17 verse 7. All right, so let me read this real quick. It says, "And they shall no more offer sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout the generations." All right. Now, this is when we were in the wilderness. Okay, and as we were in the wilderness, there were particular things that the children of Israel were doing. All right, and a lot of those things that they were doing that the Heavenly Father had frowned upon were customs that they had gotten as they lived in the land of Egypt. All right, you remember when Moses was on Mount Sinai for those 40 days and 40 nights. All right, and Moses had came down and he had bore witness to the children of Israel. All right, worshiping the golden calf. All right, which was pretty much it goes back to Apis the bull. All right, and when you go into that, it clearly says that they were playing. Matter of fact, let me get it. Let's see here. So this is in the book of Exodus, chapter 32. And let me see here. Just want to read this really quick. And this is just the account going into how they made the golden calf. All right, and how they had practiced these different customs. All right, and they had got it from Egypt. But this is Exodus chapter 32, verse 4. And it says, "And he received them at their hand and fashioned it with a graven tool. After he," and this he being Aaron, "after he made it a molten calf. And they said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. And when Aaron saw it, he built an altar before it. And Aaron made proclamation and said, Tomorrow is a feast to the Lord. And they rose up early on the morrow and offered burnt offerings and brought peace offerings. And to the people sat down to eat and drink and rose up to play. And the Lord said unto Moses, Go get thee down, for thy people, which thou broughtest out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves." All right, so this is just an example here of the type of freakism that Jacob was involved in the wilderness, and how ultimately that way had derived from Egypt. All right, this is a culture that the Egyptians were going into. All right, and again, as Israel being wicked as they are, and even Israel being in the same spirit that they was in before, all right, they were practicing these things that they had learned from the Egyptians. Now, when you go into this word play here in verse 6, the word there is tazachap. All right, tazachap. And it says to laugh, to mock, to play. All right, it says to jest, to sport, to play, to sport, to toy, to make themselves. All right. Now, ultimately as well, even Apis the bull still ties into goat worship as well. once you continue to read on further, and Lord willing, I'll do another lesson which can link Apis to goat worship as well. But at the end of the day, it just goes to devil worship, man. And that's what Jake was heavily involved in. All right. So I want to jump back into Leviticus 17. All right. And I'm going to read what I had read here a second ago. All right. Let me see. That verse was in, that was 17 and 7. All right. So it says, and they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils. And what was read in Exodus, the 32nd chapter, was an example of them making sacrifices unto devils. Now, when you go into this word devil here, the word there in the Hebrew is sha'ayar. All right, sha'ayar. And when you go into this word devil, it says hairy. It says a he-goat, a buck, a sacrificial animal. And then it says satire. And satire says may refer to a demon-possessed goat like the swine of Gadara. All right, and you read that account of that swine in Matthew 8 and 30, which is actually different. All right, those pigs literally had evil spirits on them. All right, that Yahweh Shai had cast those spirits into. All right, where those swine had jumped off the cliff. All right, this has nothing to do with actual demon-possessed goats. All right, now it does say a demon-possessed goat, and that goes to show you that whenever Esau puts in his movies the pentagram, the goat which symbolically represents Satan. All right, a lot of it goes into this word sha'ayar. All right, in the Greek, I should say. All right, they worshipped a deity named Pan. All right, it was a deity named Pan. All right, and he was actually known as a satyr as well. All right, which satyr is nothing but a Greek version of saying sha'ayar, which means a he-goat or hairy. All right, now when you research Pan as well in Grecian culture, all right, in those Greeks culture, all right, Ham was one, not Ham, Pan was one that walked around with an erection. All right, he was more so a fertility god. All right, but he was also more so a jokester or a trickster god. All right, and that even ties back to when we had read earlier in Exodus the 32nd chapter. All right, when they were offering sacrifices unto the golden calf, and it says they were playing, it says they made jest and laugh. All right, and a lot of that, it was freakism and sex acts that was going on as well. That was probably having orgies, okay, because these are things that tied in to that devil worship, as it's written of in Leviticus 17. These are things that were tied into all of that. All right, so when you go into that Grecian way, all right, when they looked at that deity that was Pan, which was a satyr, those are different traits that he was known for. Now, remember these things, brothers and sisters. Write this down, because this is stuff that I'm going to read up later on going into Egypt. All right. And how, again, Pan was a fertility deity, and he was all about playing and having sex and joking. All right. And also, too, just as a footnote, whenever you hear like comedy and everything, that's also another word for, they call it satire or joking. All right. And that was always the spirit that Jake was in. Okay. One sec. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read this page going into this manners and customs of goat worship, and then I'm gonna pull some more scriptures, and then I'm gonna dig up some history in Egypt going into it, and through the spirit I'm gonna link this to Esau Edom. All right. Now, when you read this here, it says goat worship, all right, and it alludes back to Leviticus 17 and 7. It says, they shall no more offer sacrifices unto devils, all right, and it says Serim right here, but really it's Sha'ayar. Here in 2 Chronicles 11 and 15, which I'm going to get, it says rendered devils. It derives from a word signifying hairy, shaggy, or rough, like the example in Leviticus 17 and 7 when we went into the word devil. It says, from which it was used to designate he-goats. The Egyptians worshipped the goat under the name Mendes, by which name a province in Egypt was also called. The goat was worshipped as a personification of the fructifying power of nature and was reckoned among the 8 principal gods of Egypt. A splendid temple was dedicated to Mendes, and statues of the god were erected in many places. The Israelites doubtless learned the worship of Sha'ayam or Sha'ayar, all right, among the Egyptians. It was accompanied with the vilest acts of bestiality, all right. And again, all this is we're gonna see how it went back to ancient Egypt and how it ties into the things that you see here in America today, all right, and the ones that are ruling America, all right. And we see how they adopt these customs and they actually do certain things in the society that goes back to those customs that they had adopted from those Egyptians, all right. Now, when I read this here, it referenced 2 Chronicles 11 and 15. All right. So I'm going to get that really quick. This is 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 15. And when you read this here in 2 Chronicles, the 11th chapter, it goes into how Rehoboam had gathered up men. This is after the kingdom of Israel was split into two after Solomon had died. All right. And when Solomon's son Rehoboam, all right, when Rehoboam was set up to rule over Jerusalem, and he ruled over Judah and Benjamin. And later on down the line, the Levites were taken out of their suburbs from Jeroboam, all right, and they were taken over to the land of Jerusalem. So you had the southern kingdom, which consisted of Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, all right. And again, going to the point, Rehoboam had gathered Judites and Benjamites to war against the nation of Israel under Jeroboam, all right, and he had sent his prophet to tell them to go back into their homes, to not fight against their brethren, all right. So this is just a brief summary of what was taking place before that. And as Jeroboam had gathered up the Levitical priests and casted them out of their suburbs that they lived and threw them in Jerusalem, Jeroboam himself had gathered up priests to himself. All right. And these priests pretty much were idols. They worshiped idols. I mean, not were idols, but they worshiped idols. And you remember when Jeroboam came into power, one of the first things that he did was he had went back to the ways of what those Jakes were doing in Exodus 32. And he had molten gold and made a golden calf out of it, which goes back to Apis, and the same acts that they were doing back then in Exodus 32, when it says they were offering sacrifice unto it, they were praying unto it, they were playing. All right, best believe that they were doing those same exact things when Jeroboam was ruling. All right, because that was one of the customs that went into the worship of Apis the bull. All right, and it just goes to show you that Jeroboam followed the ways of Egypt. He erred in the ways of Egypt. All right. Now this is 2 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 14. And it says, and for the Levites, there left their suburbs and their possession and came to Judah and Jerusalem. For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest office of the Lord. And he ordained him priests for the high places and for the devils and for the calves which he had made. You see? So he had ordained particular priests to offer sacrifice unto these different calves, the golden calves and these different he-goats. All right. They were actually worshiping these goats and these calves. All right. Because you remember, all right, we would sacrifice these different animals, lambs, goats, and bullocks. We would sacrifice them unto the Lord. All right. And that's one of the reasons why the Egyptians disliked us so much. All right. They called us goat hoarders, all right, and they got mad at the fact that we would offer up sacrifice of rams, goats, lambs, and calves, all right, because these are actually deities that the Egyptians worshipped, all right. So this is one of the reasons, out of many reasons why the Egyptians had such of a deep disdainment towards Israel, all right. And Jeroboam had erred, and he had pretty much went into the ways of what those Egyptians did and what those Israelites did in the wilderness around the time of Moses. All right. But when you go into this word devil here in verse 15, when it goes to saying that they worship devils, all right, for the high places and for their devils, all right, he had ordained priests for these devils. That word there is the same word that was in Leviticus, the 17th chapter in the 7th verse. The word is Sha'ayar. All right. And again, it means hairy, he-goat, buck, a sacrificial animal. So these people were actually worshiping goats under Jeroboam. All right. And as I had read earlier, all right, in this Strong's Manners and Customs, I'm sorry, not Strong's, in this Manners and Customs Freeman edition, it went back to how this goat goes back to ancient Egypt. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this here, what I found on the internet. All right. And now it's going to start getting interesting. Take heed. OK, so, I mean, it's on Wikipedia. Now, when you type in Mendez, All right. That was just another Greek way of saying his name. But the way the Egyptians called his name, it was Bam Jadet. All right. That was the Egyptian way of how that was Mendes's actually real name, his actual real name. Okay. And when you go into it, it says Bam Jadet was an ancient Egyptian ram god with the cult center at Mendes. Num was the equivalent god in Upper Egypt. All right. It says his wife was the goddess Hetamehit, and it says foremost of the fishes, who was perhaps the original deity of Mendes. All right. Their offspring was Horus the child, and they formed the so-called Mendesian triad. Okay. So when I had read that there, I found it interesting because you have Horus as well, which is an Egyptian deity, and Horus is the son of Osiris and Isis. So when I read that, I was like, okay, so this Mendes here, this Bam Jadet, has to play a huge significance of Osiris and Isis. All right, because it said here they made up a Mendesian triad. All right, which a triad pretty much represents a unification of three. All right, a unification of three, like Osiris, Isis, Horus. All right, and ultimately through studying, if you can receive it, that's actually where they came up with the Holy Trinity from. All right, that's why you don't find Holy Trinity within the Bible. Okay, but it says Horus the child. All right, in which we understand Jesus, as we see here today, and as the Christians worship, he's nothing but another version of Horus. All right, and it made me think of how there's a lot of times, especially in Christianity, that a lot of those statues will be pictures of baby Jesus. All right, so I was like, you know what, this Bam Jadet character, this Mendes, this goat deity, sounds a lot like Osiris, and his wife sounds like Isis. Okay, so I continued to read down more, and it says the words for ram and soul sounded the same in Egyptian, so ram deities were at times regarded as appearances of other gods. All right, so this ram deity could actually appear as other gods according to the Egyptian culture. Okay, now check this out. It says typically the horned god Bam Jadet was depicted with 4 ram's heads to represent the 4 Ba's of the sun god. He may also be linked to the first 4 gods to rule over Egypt. So he is linked with the first 4 gods to rule over Egypt. Check this out. Osiris, Jebshu, and Ra-Atum, with large granite shrines to each in Mendes' sanctuary. So I'm going to pause right there. All right. Because it said that this deity was linked with 4 other deities. And one of the deities it named was Osiris. Okay. So just hold on. You know, just listen. All right. So now I'm going to go into Osiris right here. All right. Because it said that this goat deity, all right, with horns is linked to Osiris. All right. So now I'm going to go into Osiris, what he ruled over according to Egyptian philosophy, and how this plays significance with what we see today. All right. So it says Osiris it says is the god of fertility, just like Pan, the satyr, the goat man. All right. It's the god of fertility, alcohol, agriculture, the afterlife, the dead, resurrection, life, and vegetation in ancient Egypt. All right. So Osiris literally was the so-called deity that was over the realm of the dead. All right. He was considered to be the god of the underworld. Okay. Now you see, to a degree, when Esau gets the whole hell thing and they get Satan and how he's the ruler over the underworld, and what's Satan really known for? Having horns. All right. Having hooves like a goat. All right. All of this at the end of the day goes back to ancient Egyptian worship. All right. So you see how people use the pentagrams today when they conjure up certain demons. When you watch certain movies, certain horror movies, and, you know, it's always some demonic shit that they show. It's always synonymous for a pentagram. All right. And even you have this show called American Horror Story, season 8, Elder Makama, he did a lesson going into it as well. How they pretty much, which we understand that a lot of these people get their ideas from the scriptures. All right. Now, of course, on that show, they went off, but it just went into showing you about the Antichrist, which we understand that there's multiple Antichrists. But when you watch that show, it was this one particular character, and he was a son of Satan. All right. And when he had been inaugurated to having that role, his shadow was pretty much a goat man with horns and hoofs. All right. Which goes to show you, all right, the way you see Esau worshiping goats and worshiping the pentagram and so forth. All right. Really, it goes back to ancient Egypt. Just another indicator that shows you that this is Egypt. All right. That goes nothing but back to Osiris, which was considered to be the ruler of the underworld. All right. Or the god of the underworld, which is what they get Satan from at the end of the day. All right. But there's a lot more to it where that came from. OK, because you remember it says he was the god of fertility. All right. And when you research about Osiris, all right, Osiris, Isis, and Horus, all right, he was supposedly killed by his brother Set, cut up in different pieces, all right, and scattered throughout all of Egypt. And Isis had searched for him, and the only thing that she could find was his phallus or his rod, and that's where she impregnated herself and had Horus, all right, which goes into the Egyptian triad, all right, just like Mendes, his wife, and baby Horus. That's nothing but the same exact thing. And what they do to pay homage unto that phallus, because the ancient Egyptians worshipped sexual parts as well, on top of all the different animals that they worshipped. All right, they worship different sexual parts. That's where you get the whole Ankh symbol from. It's supposed to represent the ovaries, not the ovaries, the womb, and then the rod, which is all types of craziness. Okay, but what I want to get is they erected different shrines to Osiris and Mendes, and you have what's called a phallus, that needle that you see in ancient Egypt, which was a tomb, all right, or a monument of Osiris, all right. Now the thing about it is, those different monuments of Osiris were what's the word I'm looking for? They were pretty much erected in different parts of the world to pay homage to the power that they worship. All right, like when you go into Washington D.C. All right, when you look at a sky view of Washington, D.C., let me type it in. All right. When you type in, I typed in pentagram over D.C. When you look at the way Washington, D.C. is mapped out, especially where they have the legislation, where they have the Capitol, all right, the White House, all right, all of it is mapped over a pentagram. And on each point of the pentagram, you have places of significance on each of those points, which goes back. The pentagram at the end of the day goes back to the head of the goat. All right. Which goes back to what these people worship, what they worshiped in ancient Egypt and what they worship right now. All right. We understand, as the book says in Ecclesiastes, the third of the first chapter. Let me get it real quick. Oh, one sec. Now it's tripping. This is Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verse 9. It says, the thing that hath been is it that which shall be done, and that which is done is that which shall be done. And there is no new thing under the sun. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before. All right, so this is just an example which shows you, man, this idea ain't nothing new. All right, these people forming a pentagram, all right, and actually worshiping to these spirits ain't nothing new. All right, when you look at Washington, D.C., when you look at the different people in Congress, we see that they sacrifice children. All right, we see that they go to certain areas where they sacrifice children and worship these different gods. All right, the same thing that those ancient Egyptians did. All right. Where they offered, they have their priesthood, all right, which we know to be the Catholic priests, all right, and also other satanic priests that they have where they conjure up spirits, they conjure up demons, and so forth. All right, it's nothing different than those magicians that were in ancient Egypt as well. All right, and you had Pharaoh that was actually guided by these different priests that practiced witchcraft. And you even read about that in Exodus. All right. When every time a miracle was done, Pharaoh tried to get his priests to mimic those miracles that was being done, those plagues that was happening. And it was to a point where they started mimicking them at first. But once the Heavenly Father started inputting those heavy judgments and those plagues, it got to a point where they couldn't do it no more. All right. But again, it just goes to show you that those priests were influenced by Satan at the end of the day. And deities, or when I say deities, I'm talking about angels on the left-hand side that the Lord has sent down. All right. And these same angels on the left-hand side that the Lord is using to bug out the minds of these people, just like they did it in ancient Egypt, they're doing it today. All right. They tell them to sacrifice these kids, to do all these things, and really have people believing that these are actually gods, when really they're just spirits from the left-hand side that the Lord has sent down. All right. Now, I'm not saying Osiris is a spirit on the left-hand side or anything, but the influence of that, all right, and the magic that came with that those heathen did, that was the power that came from the left-hand side. All right, that the Heavenly Father had allowed them to use to bug their minds out and to really just cause them to err. All right. But going back to it, you see this pentagram hovered over DC. All right. It's implanted in the ground, which again, a pentagram is nothing more than a symbolic representation of a goat head. All right. Now, also, too, on one of the points, you have the White House. All right. And in the back of the White House, you have the large pond. All right. And at the end of that large pond, you have the George Washington Monument, which is nothing but a mimicked version of that Osiris monument, which is the obelisk needle, which goes back to representing Osiris's rod. All right. Or his phallus, because, again, he goes to being a fertility deity. All right. And the same thing as Mendes. He was also a fertility deity because Mendes was nothing but an extension of Osiris. All right. And just like when you go into the culture of the Greeks, when you looked at Pan, who was also a satyr. All right. When you read about it, he ran around with an erection. All right. And there's certain statues of Osiris as he stands there. A lot of those Egyptians have statues where that certain individual has an erection because that shows what they were all about. All right. And even Aleister Crowley, who was known as hey, man, he might be Esau for real. But I'm just being funny. I'm not saying he is for sure. But pretty much he had actually practiced what was called sex magic in different tombs when he traveled in Egypt. All right. And he had actually summoned a deity that went by the name of Iwas. All right. Which really, it was a demon at the end of the day. All right. In his eyes, it was a deity. That's why I said it. All right. And Iwas had pretty much persuaded him to do certain sexual acts to his disciple when they actually were in the pyramid in Egypt. All right. So there's definitely a heavy spiritual on the left hand side influence in the land of Egypt. And we see it mimicked all over here in America, where Aleister Crowley has a bunch of followers. All right. Like Anton LaVey. All right. Like what's the lady's name who started Lucis Trust? You have Madame Blavatsky. All right. A lot of these people were influenced by powers that are on the left hand side. And a lot of political figures that you see in office that have power, they're also influenced by it. All right. Now, going back to it, you have an obelisk needle located in Washington, D.C. You also have an obelisk needle located in London. OK, and you also have an obelisk needle located in Vatican City, Rome. And these three places play a huge significance on the witchcraft that Esau Edom pushes. All right, because where every single last one of these obelisk needles are, they represent something bigger. All right, these places represent 3 city states. All right, that you read about in Revelation, the 13th chapter. All right, about those 3 unclean frogs that came out the mouth of the beast. All right, one of them representing Esau's financial department, which is London. The other one representing his wicked priesthood, which is Vatican City, Rome. And last but not least, represents his arms in his war, which goes to Washington, D.C. OK, so Esau knows what he's doing. All right. And just as those deities were heavily worshipped back then, they're heavily worshipped right here today. All right. So we tackled the point going into how when you go into that word devil there, that word devil goes into being hairy. It goes into a he-goat. We went in to show you how back in ancient Egypt they was doing these things, and over here in America that they were doing these things. So I got another scripture I'm going to pull up. All right. And this is going to be in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, into a verse that we all know. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships, by the way whereof I speak unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there they shall be sold to their enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. All right, so this here is going into the curses. All right. And one of the curses went into how we were going to be delivered into the land of Egypt by ship. All right. Which obviously it's not talking about ancient Egypt because we didn't go there by ship. But it's talking about a future destination that we were going to be held at to serve captivity here within these last days, which spiritually is talking about America. All right. When you go into that word Egypt, the word Egypt is synonymous for Mitzrayim. All right. And when you go into that word Mitzrayim, it means double straight, or it means bondage. All right. Because just like in ancient Egypt, we had served those 400 years of captivity. And just like over here in America, the children of Israel had served 400 plus years in captivity under their oppressors. All right. I got another precept here in the book of Revelation, the 11th chapter. All right, in the 8th verse. This is Revelation 11:8. And it says, and their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. All right. So now here in Revelation, the 11th chapter, it's talking about a place that spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. And reason being why it's spiritually called that. All right. Well, first and foremost, we know that it's not talking about the actual land, because Sodom and Gomorrah right now was a heap. It's a desert somewhere, because the Lord obliterated it when he had put up pretty much with the heinous acts that they were doing. And different things that they were doing in Sodom was they was practicing homosexuality. All right. It was spiritual. It was actual spiritual and physical fornication that was taking place. They was practicing bestiality. All right. They were worshiping idols to the utmost degree. All right. They were probably worshiping the goat deity and the calf over there, too, because at the end of the day, this is stuff that was worshipped even before the flood. They was into this type of stuff. You know, that's why the Lord flooded the earth. All right. So this influence was already placed on the planet Earth. All right. After the seed of the wicked was multiplied. All right. Which was the seed of Cain, is where I'm getting at. All right. And we see that influence today. All right. But it also says Egypt. Now, we know that Sodom and Egypt aren't in the same place. All right. They're two totally different locations. But here it's talking about a place that spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt. And this same Egypt was the same Egypt that the children of Israel were prophesied to go in captivity in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, which we see here to be America. All right. Now, as we see that Egypt and America are spiritually synonymous one for another, you have particular people that ruled over the ruled over the Israelites and oppressed the Israelites in ancient Egypt and in modern day Egypt. Back in ancient Egypt, it was the Egyptians. Right now, the Egyptians are synonymous for Edomites. All right. And the same powers and the same deities that those Egyptians were worshiping back then. All right. Esau Edom is worshiping it today. All right. Now, just to show you that Esau does link up with Egypt. Let's see here. This is in the book of Joel. This is the book of Joel, chapter 3, verse 19. It says, Egypt shall be a desolation, and Edom shall be a desolate wilderness for the violence against the children of Judah, because they have shed innocent blood in the land. All right. So this is another indicator which clearly shows you that Esau, Edom, and Egypt are synonymous one for another. All right. Because back around the time of Joel, Egypt wasn't even significant anymore. All right. Now, of course, they still had a pharaoh and so forth, but it wasn't the supreme superpower on the planet Earth. All right. But Joel was prophesying about a future event that was going to take place. And when you read up in Joel, the 3rd chapter, it goes into the valley of Jehoshaphat where Armageddon is going to be what's going to happen at. All right. So when you go into this, man, this Egypt right here is synonymous for America. All right. In the chief house of America. All right. The head of America, the chief nation of people that's really on the planet Earth, but they have all their pride invested in America. It's Esau Edom. All right. It's Esau Edom. This is modern day Pharaoh. And just like ancient Pharaoh and those Egyptians worship different deities, they worship the goat. They worship the dead. They worship Osiris, which is nothing but another version of Mendes, which was the devil or the goat. All right. That was being sacrificed to by the children of Israel. That same power is being uplifted over here today. All right. And that power, that energy on the left hand side has influenced the minds of these Edomites to really believe that these are actually high powers, man. And it just goes into witchcraft at the end of the day. All right. Now let's go into the he-goat some more. All right, because we went into how the he-goat was a deity that was worshipped by the Egyptians. We went into how the he-goat, or the Baphomet, all right, or that goat, all right, for fertility and sex and androgyny is something that's uplifted very high here in America. All right, let's go into it. So the next scripture I'm going to go into is going to be in the book of Daniel, the 8th chapter. Let's see here. And I'm going to start at the 4th verse. All right. And this is going into the ram and the goat. All right. It says, I saw the ram pushing westward and northward and southward so that no beast might stand before him. All right. And this ram right here is synonymous for the Persians and the Medes. All right. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but he did according to his will and became great. And as I was considering, behold, an he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth and touched not the ground. And the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. All right. So when you go into this ram and this goat fighting amongst each other was a symbolic representation of the Persians and the Medes fighting against the Grecians. All right. Fighting against the Greeks. All right. And you can read about the different accounts on it. And there was even a battle that had taken place between the Greeks and Xerxes. All right. Which you can actually watch the movie 300, which it really goes into this. All right. So the goat was synonymous for Greece. All right. And Greece also, too, was the first power that Esau Edom had, where he ruled over the face of the whole earth. But you find it funny that he's called the goat. All right. They consider the Greeks being the goat, which at the end of the day, the Greeks around that time when Alexander had came and taken over and ruled the rest of the world, that was when Esau Edom were the Greeks, because the original Greeks were was Javan or Yawan, which goes back to those Japhites, all right, and those Etruscans, okay. But Esau Edom had infiltrated that and had taken on and adopted those customs for themselves, just like they've done throughout history, okay. But here he's known as being the he-goat, the Greeks, and that notable horn was Alexander. And you read about how that horn had broke up into 4 pieces, and they were the 4 generals, and they influenced the whole earth in wickedness. That's why it says wickedness was greatly multiplied around these 4 generals when you read about it in the book of Maccabees. All right. Now, just another scripture to go into it, Proverbs 29:16. It says, when the wicked are multiplied, transgression increases, but the righteous shall see their fall. All right. So as those Greeks got in power, that Grecian way literally had taken on and influenced the whole earth around that time. Wickedness. All right. Under the goat. All right. Because after the goat, you had who ruled after the goat? It was pretty much the Romans after that. All right. Well, when you go into the 4 beasts, all right, you had the lion, which represented Babylon, or the Neo-Babylonian Empire with those Assyrians and Babylonians. All right. And then you had the goat. Not the goat. I'm sorry about that. Then you had the bear, which was synonymous pretty much for the Persians and the Medes. Then you had the leopard, which was synonymous for the Grecians, and then you had the 4th beast, which was synonymous for the Roman Empire. All right. So since these Grecians were in power, they've influenced the world, and there was a period of time where they were casted down. All right, during the start of the Byzantine Empire, a little bit before that. All right, when Jakes had ruled for those 1,000 years. And after those 1,000 years, that's where that leash was let loose on Satan, Esau Edom, to continue to subdue the earth and rule it in wickedness for that short season, which is what we're in. But we see the things that they're doing within this short season. All right. They're into witchcraft. They find different ways to bewitch you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And at the end of the day, it all goes back to Baphomet, man. The way that they live, the doctrine that they push. All right. When you see transgenderism going on. All right. When you see the stuff that they're trying to teach your children in school. At the end of the day, it goes all the way back to Baphomet, which goes back to Mendes, man. Which goes back to Osiris. All right. Hey, at the end of the day, man, Esau Edom is the he-goat. All right. Esau's the devil, man. Again, when you go into that word devil, the word there is Sha'ayar. All right. Which goes into hairy or the he-goat. All right. And when we see When we read that definition of Sha'ayar, it said hairy. Now, who was known as the hairy man? All right, who was hairy when he came out of the womb? Let's get this here in Genesis 27. All right. I'm sorry, Genesis 25, Salakia. All right. This is Genesis 25 and 24. All right, this goes into Jacob and Esau when they were born. And when her days be delivered and were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in the womb. And the first came out red all over like a hairy garment. And they called his name Esau. All right. So we see that this man over here, this man that when he was born, he was red and he was hairy. All right. And these are the hairy people that you see today as well, man. This is the modern day caveman. All right. They grow hair all over their backs everywhere. I mean, these are some hairy bastards, man. The Lord literally made them come out hairy, looking like goats. All right. And we see why through America, man, they call children kids, which a kid is a baby goat. So they even from the womb, they try to groom you to take on the image of this beast, man. All right. The image of this way. Because at the end of the day, man, this is the 666 system right here. And the ruler of the 666 system is Esau Edom. All right. And these are parts of his image, the witchcraft that he pushes, the stuff that he teaches your kids. This is the image of the beast. All right. And it's going to come to a point where he's going to actually put a chip in you to make you his property. So you can make a covenant, not with the Most High, but have a covenant with him, which is going to be that mark. All right. This is him at the end of the day. All right. And he's being influenced by the Most High, and the Heavenly Father is sending these evil angels to bewitch the minds of these people. And they believe that they're doing the right thing, worshiping children to Baphomet, to Molech, doing all these different things. It goes back to ancient Egypt at the end of the day. Again, Baphomet's nothing but another form of Mendez or Banjadet that we were reading about, which pretty much is an extension of Osiris, who was the god of the underworld, man. And we see Esau Edom being the gatekeeper of this, man. All right, he's the gatekeeper. These demons go to Esau to carry his will at the end of the day. All right, Esau Edom is the children of Satan. All right, these are the children of the wicked at the end of the day. And we can see it through their actions. We can see it what they worship. We can see it just what they push here in America. This is them. All right. I got another scripture I'm going to go into, and it's in the book of Psalms, chapter 68. And I find this very interesting when you read this in Psalm 68, because when you read the whole chapter of Psalm 68, it goes into the chariots, all right, and how the Lord is going to come down on his chariots and he's going to smite our enemies. All right, he's going to use his chariots to cast fire on the heads of our enemies, man. All right. Now, this is Psalm 68 in verse 20. I'm going to start at verse 19. It says, "Blessed be the Lord Yahweh, who daily loadeth us with benefits, even the power of our salvation, Selah. He that is our God is the God of salvation. And unto Yahweh, the Lord belongeth the issues of death." Check this out. This is the key point. Verse 21. "But the Most High shall wound the head of his enemies." And who is our enemies right now? Esau Edom. This is modern day Pharaoh. All right. That's why when the elect get beamed up into those chariots, they're going to sing what? The Song of Moses. And when you read about the Song of Moses is in Exodus, the 15th chapter. And when you go into the actual Song of Moses, we're singing a song of our deliverance out of Egypt and how the Lord had cast down Pharaoh and the rest of those Egyptians. All right. And earlier in Joel, the 3rd chapter, we read how Esau and Egypt and their destruction were synonymous for one another. All right. So Esau is modern day Pharaoh. Esau Edom are the modern day Egyptians. All right. And just as the ancient Egyptians worshipped Osiris, worshipped the goat. All right. They taken on that image. All right. You see Esau Edom doing the same exact thing. All right. And Esau Edom is, at the end of the day, he's a gatekeeper. All right. He's a gatekeeper to these different spirits, this energy that's here, man. All right. He is the goat. OK, this is Psalm 68 and 21. It says, "But the Most High shall wound the head of his enemies, and the hairy scalp of such as one goeth on still in his trespass." All right. So it says the Most High is going to use his chariots to wound the hairy scalp, All right. And who was the man that's hairy at the end of the day? That's Esau Edom. We read that earlier in Genesis 25. Now I'm going to go into the word hairy right here. And what do you know? it says Sha'ira, which is another form of Sha'ayar. All right. It's just Sha'ayar is an extension of Sha'ira. And when you go into it, it says hair of animals. All right. And when you jump to the lexicon, it says what? A rough, hairy man. All right. So Esau Edom know what's up, man. And when you link all these things to the spirit, you can obviously see who the devil is, man. Because these same people push the same energy. This goes to show you that America and the rulers of America, really the rulers of the world, but it starts with America, all right, because this is the chief superpower. All right, they're influenced by the same energy that influenced Egypt, man. All right, it's the same deities that they worship. They sacrifice offerings to the same exact energy. All right, it's nothing new. This is the he-goat at the end of the day. All right, and the Lord had given us the spiritual eyes to be able to spot it out and call it out on who this man actually is. All right. This right here clearly said the Lord is going to use his chariots to render vengeance to our enemies. All right. And this considers our enemies to be the hairy man. Just like in Daniel, the 8th chapter, he's considered the he-goat, which is Greece, which Greece is nothing but Esau. All right. When you read about Greece in Daniel, the 8th chapter, that is synonymous for Edomites. All right. Now, brothers do lessons on that all the time. So if you want to get edification to show you that those Grecians right there are the Edomites, just type it in on the Great Millstone and you'll find a video. All right. But this is the he-goat. All right. This is the same he-goat. This is the same influence that was in ancient Egypt. And we see it today in America. This is him. All right. This is Esau Edom, man, the devil the Bible speaks of. All right. John 8:44. John 8:44, what does it say? It says, "Ye are of your father, the devil." Now, Yahushua was speaking on the wicked scribes and the Pharisees, but the wicked scribes and the Pharisees were the same ones that would always uplift the laws of Caesar. All right. Whenever Yahushua would say that when he said that he was a king, they said, no, man, Caesar's our king. We have one king but Caesar. They would pay tribute unto the Romans. They would pay homage unto the Romans. The way that they were still able to offer up their duties within the Sanhedrin, they were influenced by the Romans still. The Romans controlled all of that. This is when the Romans were in power. So Yahushua was telling them, "Ye are of your father, the devil." And who are these Romans that were in power? This is Esau Edom. All right. Again, when you went into the word devils in 2 Chronicles, the 11th chapter, all right, the 2 Chronicles 11 and 15, that word devils there was Sha'ayar, which represented he-goats, man. All right, so it says, "Ye are of your father, the devil." This is him. "And the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him." All right, and who was the murderer from the beginning? Who was the world's first murderer? That was Cain. All right, and that same spirit of Cain came on later on down the line to be Esau Edom for wanting vengeance on his brother Jacob, just like Cain had taken vengeance on his brother Abel. All right, this is him, the murderer from the beginning. All right. And we see his blessing. All right. He was blessed to rule the earth with the sword, man. And what did he do with that sword? He murdered. All right. He was the teeth of the earth, and he murdered everywhere he goes. So he murders, he lies. He does all of this because that's what a devil will do. All right. And he's just the spawn of Satan at the end of the day. All right. It says, "When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it." All right. So this devil right here is synonymous for those Romans. All right, which was Esau Edom. All right, which at the end of the day goes back to the goat, because the Romans were nothing but the Grecians later on. All right, it was the same people. All right, this is the he-goat, man. Okay, and I got another scripture in Matthew 25. I think it's in Matthew 24. Let's see here. That's in Matthew 25. This is Matthew 25 and 32, and I'm going to end it off on this one. I'm going to start at verse 31. It says, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory." All right. And how's Yahushua going to come in his glory? With those chariots. All right. So this is a precept to what was read in Psalm 68. It says, "When the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all his holy angels with him, then shall he sit upon the throne of his glory." And the angels are going to come in chariots as well. And what are they going to do? They're going to wound the hairy head of our enemies, as it was written. And who was the hairy one? All right. That's the he-goat. All right. That's Esau Edom. All right. And it says, and before him shall be gathered all nations, and he shall separate them one from another, which shows you the Lord ain't with all the nations coming together, but he's saying here that he's going to separate all the nations, which the Lord has always been about separation. Because we see when all the nations come together, all these different philosophies and doctrines get joined together, and there's a bowl of confusion all over the place here. And Babylon is known for being a bowl of confusion, man. The word Babylon literally means confusion. All right. But it says, and he shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set his sheep on his right hand and the goats on his left hand. All right. And what's going to happen to those that are on the left hand? They're going to get obliterated. All right. They're going to be destroyed with fire. OK, that's when you read about it in Revelation, the 8th chapter, where it goes into how the stars fell from heaven and slain the third part of men. You read about the third part of men, and that is going into the sons of the wicked, because you have three particular people. You have the sons of God, the sons of men, and the sons of the wicked. So that third part of men that's going to be destroyed is Esau Edom, the son of the wicked. All right. The same one, pretty much, that's a reflection of Satan himself. All right. The goat, the he goat, man. All right. Because what? Satan is personified to being the god of the underworld, which we understand that that's bullshit. All right. But Esau taps into this power on the left hand side, and they're persuaded by these angels on the left hand side to do his will, which Satan is the chief angel on the left hand side. All right. So Esau is doing nothing but the will of Satan on the planet Earth, which at the end of the day, it goes to the will of the Most High. And the Lord is using these people to be this goat, to be these devils, man. All right. Hey, at the end of the day, man, Esau Edom is the devil the Bible speaks of. All right. And we see it now. But I wanted to go into that. I found it very interesting when I was doing reading on that. All right. And I wanted to do a lesson on it. Didn't really know when, but I knew after I read it, sometime within the future, I was going to do a lesson. So I know it was a lot of information. All right. This lesson is probably about almost an hour long. All right. But yeah, man, I'm going to end it off on that. Lord, then it was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone at Ruwell. Peace and blessings and much salutation to you, elect Akim. Salutations to the elect, the believers, and shalom to the few sincere sisters that are out there. All right. Hey, keep pushing in whatever the Lord gave you as a lot. Shalom.